Hi lovelies, welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be going about the cutting and the sewing of a 4 pieces mermaid skirt, as you can see right here on the screen, and also how to use your crinoline or your horsehair braid to go about the hemming of your skirt to get this perfect flowing effect, as you can see right here on my skirt. So if this sounds like something you're interested in learning how to do, please continue watching, and it's totally beginners friendly. Without much ado, let's get started. So to make this skirt, all you'll be needing is your lining piece, your African print fabric, and your crinoline or your horsehair braid. So I have this drafted pattern paper, which is for a basic skirt. I drafted from my waist up to my knee of 20 inches. So when I was drafting this, I subtracted 1.5 inches from the length. I got my hip line of 8.5 inches and my knee line length of 20 inches. So because I'll be fixing a rope to the waist of my skirt, I divided my hip circumference by 4, and I'm going to use that as my actual waist circumference. Then I'll also use that same on my hip line. So that is why you see the line from my waist to my hip line straight. So I subtracted 1 inch from my hip circumference and marked it as my knee circumference. So I went ahead to fold my fabric into 2. So remember, this is a 4-piece skirt. That means that it will be 2 in front and 2 at the back. So after folding, now from the center folded part of my fabric, I started marking this 8 inches, which I also went ahead to connect into a straight line using my straight ruler. So after doing this, now I'm just simply going to place my already drafted pattern on this fabric. But before I go ahead to do that, I will have to fold in 1.5 inches, remember, which I subtracted while I was drafting my pattern. So I'm going to fold it in and add extra 1/2 inch, which will serve as my joining allowance, because this 1.5 inches will be for my band. So by the time I do that, I'll go ahead and use my office pin to pin this down. So when I must have done that, now I'll get my pattern and place it from exactly that line of 8 inches I marked. So if you watch closely, my pattern is starting exactly underneath from this folded top part of my fabric, which will be serving as my band. I went ahead to pin my pattern on my fabric all around so you can see what I have. So the next, I'm going to extend this my side of my skirt all the way to the ends of this fabric in a straight line this way. So having done this, now I'll move over to the center front or folded part of my skirt, which is this part where I marked 8 inches. Now from my knee line, exactly under my knee, I'm going to mark 1/2 inch away from that line. So I'm marking it towards the folded edge of my fabric. So I'm also extend that knee line to my fabric. Now I'm going to make a connection from that 1/2 inch line all the way to the ends of my skirt in this way. So that 1/2 inch I marked away from my line, I'll mark it all the way up to my waist on top of this my fabric. So now for the sides of this my skirts, I'll go ahead and also extend that knee line to my fabric. Now for the sides of your skirts, remember we are adding stitching allowance or sewing allowance. I added the sewing allowance of 1.5 inches from the folded band of my skirt up to my knee, and I'll stop exactly at that point. So I'll connect these dots I've made here so far, and now I'll come to that straight line which I connected up to the base of my fabric. So I'm going to mark 10 inches extension away from that line. So at this point, it all depends on how flowing you want your skirt to be. You can go ahead to mark as much as 16 inches. It all depends on the yards of fabric and the flowing effect you want. So go ahead and also connect it to your knee line, just as I've done right here, and make sure it's not pointy or sharp. Just go ahead and blend this and curve it out perfectly. We are done now drafting for the front part of our skirt. As you can see, go ahead and cut out exactly you've drafted, just the same way I'm doing right here. Okay, so from this pointy part of our fabric, I went up by 1.5 inches. Then I'm going to slant this in this way using my curve rule. So having done this, now I'm going to draft out the back part of my skirt, which is going to be exactly like this. So because I'm not fixing zipper to mine, I'll just give you all a rundown on how to go about fixing your zipper when you want to actually draft yours, in case you don't want to go with a rope. Okay, so if you're fixing a zipper, you're going to go ahead and also fold your fabric into two, just the same way I did for the front part. So I just had to go ahead to fold my 2 inches for my band. Then when you must have done this, place the front part of your skirt on this your folded fabric. Then ensure there are spaces at both sides on your fabric so that your extensions can freely fit in. Then on your center, on that center, just at that point, you just mark your your zip allowance of 1.5 inches. And remember, whatever you're marking at the top, you're also marking it at the extensions. So having done that, now I'll go ahead and cut out on my lining piece. So I also folded my band of 2 inches. Now I placed the front part of this my skirt because I don't want to remove my pattern paper yet. Take this up from my knee upward, and I'm going to mark 1 inch from beneath my knee line. So this will be for my folding allowance. So I'll just cut off the base and I'll cut off the sides as well. So I'm not touching the center. I'm not dividing the center into 4. It's just going to be 1 piece for the front and 1 piece for the back. I mean for my lining piece, as you can see right here. So I folded into 4 before I went ahead to cut. So after cutting exactly what I have for my front part on the back, so I did a little joining, as you can see, for the back part right here, because I worked with just 3 yards of this African print fabric. So if you want to get an exact perfect flowing skirt, make use of 4 yards and above. So because I'm fixing a rope, that is why the back part of my skirt and the front part are all looking the same. I've removed my pattern paper at this point, so I'll simply start joining. So I'm not going to separate the front part of my skirt. I'm still going to leave them right sides facing each other, and I'm going to join the center part of my skirt using just half of an inch. So that half an inch I marked earlier away from that my 8 inches line, that is what I'm going to use to join from the top part all the way to the ends or the hem of my fabric. I'll also do the same thing for the back part of my skirt, from the top to the base of my fabric. So I've gone ahead to do this, and this is for one part or the front part of the skirt. This is what it looks like on the wrong side, and this is what I have on the right side. So I'll simply go ahead now to get the other side, which is the back part of my skirt, and I'm also going to start joining them, placing them right sides facing each other. I will join them at the sides using my stitching allowance of 1.5 inches, which was given while I was cutting on my fabric. So I'll go ahead and arrange this at the side first, and I'm going ahead to pin. So after pinning, I will now go ahead and mark my 1.5 inches stitching allowance from the top part of this my skirt all the way to the hem or the base. So when you get to your knee line, just continue marking your stitching allowance just exactly the shape of your skirt went. So don't go ahead to spoil the effect of the mermaid. Okay, so I'll go ahead and stitch the both sides. Now this is for my lining piece. I placed my 2 lining together, that's for the front and for the back or part of my skirt. So I pinned the side. So I'm also going to mark that 1.5 inches, which is my stitching allowance, to it. So I'll stitch the both sides of my lining piece, and on the base I'll also go ahead and hem using that 1 inch which I gave this earlier while I was cutting. So fold half of an inch and fold it again, so that means you're folding twice to get 1 inch. So this is all I will do. So by the time I did this is what I have for my lining piece at both sides I stitched. And for my skirt, you can see what I have. This is the wrong side of my skirt. I've joined the front and the back part together at the sides. So you can see what I have. So at this point we have 4 pieces of this our skirt. So this is the right side of our skirt. Now I'm going to join it together with my lining piece. So having this front or the right side of my fabric facing the camera, I'm just going to get this my lining piece. So at this point, from the base of my lining piece, I'm going to pass through my skirt this way. Then I'll make sure that it aligns on the waist area with my lining. I hope you understand what I did there. So at this point, the right side of my lining and the right side of my fabric are facing each other. So on the waist area now, I'm going to join this all around. So before I join, I'll go ahead and pin this first. So at this point now, the wrong side of the lining is facing the camera, okay, and the right side of my lining and the right side of my fabric are facing each other. So after pinning, I'll go ahead and stitch them all around together using just 1/2 inch. So when I have gone ahead to do that, you can see what I have. So now I'm going to take up my lining piece to review the right side of my skirt, and you can see how I've joined it so far. So I'm going to now push this my lining inside my skirt. So it's not really lapping and it's not really giving me what I want, and I'm going to go ahead now to give this a very nice pressing or ironing. So when I iron this is what I have. So you can see what it looks like right now. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to flip this my fabric to the wrong, sorry, my skirt to the wrong side, and I'm just going to fold in 1.5 inches. So remember that we've already stitched the waist of our fabric and our lining together using 1/2 inch. So all we have left now is 1.5 inches, which I'm going to be using to stitch my band as initially stated. So I'm going to pin 1.5 inches and make sure I measure this out all around. Then I'll go ahead and stitch. So you can see what I have right now after stitching, and I also went ahead to iron this very well. So this is it for the waist part of our skirt, and you can see how nice it's looking. And the next thing is to fix our crinoline or our horsehair braid to the hem or the base of our skirt to give it a perfect fit. So on the right side of your fabric at the base, you are going to pin your crinoline or your horsehair braid just the way I'm pinning. So the horsehair braid I'm working with right here is 1 inch wide. Okay, so this is it. I had to take this to my sewing machine so that I can have a closer and better view of what I'm doing. So when you place it, make sure you stitch using about 1/2 inch. All right, so stitch using about 1/2 inch, just as I'm doing right here. So you're going to stitch it until you get to the other end of your crinoline or your horse braid. So when you must have stitched this and get to the other end and stopped right there, so you're just going to cut it out. So this is what it looks like on the wrong side. So just flip it to the wrong side, and this is what you're going to have. Okay, so just automatically when you're done stitching on the right side, flip it to the wrong side and ensure that your horsehair braid is right on top of the wrong side of your fabric. So when you must have achieved this, you're not going to stitch that top part of your crinoline on your fabric. So most times some people would rather hem or do an invisible tacking if they don't want the lines to show, but for me at this point I just had to stitch. Okay, so when you now go ahead and do this all around, so this is what I have. So it's as simple as it looks. So you can see now this my skirt is really attaining a very beautiful shape, right? So I also went ahead to iron this quickly. Now also come over to the waist because I'm yet to fix my rope. So I had this rope which is twice my hip circumference, and I used my lining because my fabric wasn't enough. So at the sides, at just one side of my skirt, I loosed that band which I stitched. I loosed about 6 inches. Okay, so this is because I want my rope to be fixed or attached to the side of my skirt. I don't want it in front of my skirt. Okay, so now having done this, now I will get that band which I've loosed, and I'm just going to open it up slightly this way using my scissors. So on the right side, that's where this opening will be made. Okay, so because we really need our rope to pass through this. Okay, so that my hole was a little bit tiny. I was trying to use my seam ripper to make it wide. Please, it shouldn't be too wide. Then I also did the same thing for the other side. So you can see we now have two openings at the side for the front skirt and the back skirt, just at the side. Now I have this my rope, which I'm going to knot like twice on the ends, okay, so that it doesn't pull off easily from the waist doing readjustment and adjustment. So the other end, I had to pin it with my safety pin. Then I'm going to pass it through that hole, and through that part I loosened on my band. So I'm going to pass this through all around till I get to the other side of the hole of my band where I loosed. So if my explanation is not really too clear, please just watch what I'm doing and I believe you understand. Okay, so when I get to the other hole, I'll bring out my safety pin from there. So I'm going to stretch this my rope very well so that I can have the same length of ropes on my skirt, as you can see right here. So when I brought it out from the other side, I also went ahead to knot it twice. One unique thing with fixing a rope instead of a zipper to the waist part of your skirt is that you get the chance to adjust your waist of your skirt to any size. All right, so when you must have done that, I also went ahead to knot the other side twice and also stitch up that part which I opened. So after you iron this properly, and that was just it. So this is your perfect 4-piece skirt. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, and to my subscribers, I love you all. Till some other time, I'll see you all in this same channel. Do have a lovely time ahead of you all. Bye.